Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Shelter on Base. I'm Cole Kuiper, here with Therese Vinal, Anthony Garcia, Carmen Kiew, and this week's special guest, Kerry Crowley, beat writer for the Giants. How you doing, man?
You know, I am doing well. There was baseball to cover this week. The Major League Baseball draft took place, so definitely in better spirits. It's been a lot of coronavirus coverage on my end, and it's nice to return back to the world of sports, even if it's just for a cameo.
Well, we like to start out by getting a feel of what our guest has been up to during coronavirus. What's been the main thing keeping you busy, non-work related, during COVID?
Well, there's a restaurant close by that does to-go breakfast burritos, and I pretty much go there every morning. And I know that it's the whole shelter-in-place order and you're supposed to stay home, but you also really need to prioritize local businesses and keeping them afloat. So I have chosen one restaurant in my neighborhood, Lucho's, over at 19th and Ocean in San Francisco. And that's where I spend the majority of my time, in line there, getting the breakfast burrito, chorizo breakfast burrito. And then I go to work for a while, and I downloaded TikTok, so I watch a lot of those. And I think that's probably enough from my end.
Oh no, Kerry, you went down the TikTok wormhole?
Wait, have you made a TikTok video?
Ooh.
I don't think I've made one, but
you don't think? I think you would know if you made one or not.
So I've got a few TikToks, but I don't think I've released them to the public. I'm not that confident in my skill set yet. You know, if you're going to go on the app, you have to go all in, and I don't know that I'm there yet, but I definitely am a fan.
What trend did you do? I need to know. Was it like the egg in the dog's mouth, or?
I don't know that we need to get into the specifics of the Savage Dance, but
yeah, I want to see you and Carmen do a collab.
We can do the light switch challenge.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
It's called the do. I don't know a lot about TikTok, but I know duet is a thing. So
Carmen and I could definitely duet on TikTok.
I'm in. Hit me up.
Yeah.
We got one question from a fan I want to start the show out with.
Definitely not
and then we'll go into the meat and potatoes of this. But Dwayne K. from Danville wanted to ask you about your nickname around the press box.
Yeah, the nickname around the press box, and Dwayne K., very kind individual there, checking in. The nickname around the press box is homeroom because, believe it or not, I've now been doing this job for 3 whole years. Just celebrated the 3-year anniversary on Monday of this week. And when I started, it was still a challenge for me to grow facial hair. And so another person named Dwayne, actually, believe it or not, started calling me homeroom because he felt that I looked like I belonged in a homeroom classroom in high school instead of a Major League Baseball press box. So unfortunately, the nickname made it to air during a Giants-Angels game. And, it was just a nondescript Giants-Angels game in April, except everyone started tuning in when Brandon Belt had a 21-pitch at bat. So there were all sorts of people watching, and the nickname has stuck thanks to Dwayne, another Dwayne K., Mike Kruko, and then Henry Schulman as well. Henry, veteran of the press box, who has not let me live that nickname down.
Well, that's awesome. We need to get you a jersey that says homeroom on the back.
If there's one thing that I absolutely do not need in my life, it is that.
Well, Dwayne K. from Danville might hear this and act on it.
Yeah, watch out.
Thank you, Dwayne.
I can only imagine what that guy's doing with his time.
I'm 33, and I also have a hard time growing facial hair. It hasn't happened for me yet. It's not going to happen. So us bad facial hair people have to say.
There we go.
It just doesn't connect.
we got to. You mentioned the draft, Kerry, was this week. Finally something for us baseball fans to watch and for you to cover. The Giants selected Patrick Bailey, a catcher, in the first round. Then with the pick they got from Mad Bum, they took Nick Swiney, another lefty from North Carolina. So they took 2 NC State guys with their first 2 picks. And then they also took a local kid, Kyle Harrison, from De La Salle in the 5th round. So I know the draft literally just ended. I've been watching a lot of Parks and Rec, guys. I know you guys are excited about that.
Yeah.
Literally the best news of the month.
As Chris Traeger said, literally just ended. And it's way too early to prognosticate and give grades and analysis. But you know what? Let's do it anyway. How did the Giants do in the draft?
I think that the Giants chose players that they had long-standing relationships with and that they had a lot more information on than they did on certain guys who maybe were higher ceiling players, more boom or bust types. I think that the Giants have obviously scouted NC State extensively. They acquired Will Wilson in the offseason, the top Angels draft pick last year. So they take Bailey in the first round and then Swiney with the pick in the compensatory selection. And then they also chose RJ Davovich out of Arizona State, who they scouted last year when they were looking at Hunter Bishop. They took Harrison, the pitcher out of De La Salle, who's in the backyard. They watched him a lot on Team USA. So I think what we learned from this Giants draft is it was relatively risk averse. They saw what happened with the coronavirus shutdown. Obviously, none of these guys are playing out a full high school season or a full college season, and they chose the guys that they knew the most about. And I don't think that that's probably the most exciting strategy for fans, but it is something that could serve this team well in the long run, particularly when you're looking at rounds 2 through 5, just because this is an organization that from 2012 to 2017 really hasn't produced much major league talent from those rounds.
Yeah, I was joking last year when the Giants took Hunter Bishop. We have Joey Bart. We can do Bart train hats. I'm always thinking about hats when we draft people. So the Bart train hat for Joey Bart.
Quite the hat.
Bishop was on. I said the Archbishop. We can get Archbishop like diocese hat. And I learned that there's a brand of hat called Bailey. So there is another hat connection with another Giants draft pick. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, I drink Bailey's. I don't know much about a hat in Bailey's. So.
Anthony, what's your favorite hat we've had? Because I loved the Milkmen hats.
Oh, yeah.
The panda hat. The panda hat was good. And also, it's also kind of functional. Like you could wear that out. You could wear it also out somewhere. Maybe it keeps your head warm. It just seemed a little more functional than just something that you could just wear at the ballpark.
Just picturing Anthony at the club, just like dancing with the panda hat on.
Oh, what's up, girl? Just me and my panda hat coming over here.
That's the first thing you think of functional, Carmen? Like, if clothing is functional, you take it to the club?
He said go out with it.
Yeah. Fair.
So I got to ask the obvious question, and obviously articles are written about this, but they go with their first round pick and they picked a catcher. Like, I thought we're good on the catchers. Aren't we good with catchers? Like, there was probably plenty of other pitchers that were available because that seems to be the space of need that the Giants have right now. So, Kerry, please break it down for me. And I've seen a lip service. They're going to work great together. We're going to have, like, this awesome dual pair catcher thing happening. For reals. Like, is this trade bait? What's going on?
Well, I'm really grateful you asked, Therese, because it gives me a chance to address my article from Wednesday morning where I previewed 10 different players the Giants might draft. And I said, Patrick Bailey was on that list. And I said, I just don't see this happening. I don't see them. So I'm really glad that was out there on the internet for a while. And I didn't actually end up hearing from a lot of people about that. Interesting. But yeah, so it was definitely a surprising move to see the Giants go with the catcher. Farhan Zaidi and Michael Holmes, the Giants amateur scouting director, both defended it as he was the best player available on the board. And what I see as the motive behind this pick is there were probably a few different players the Giants liked at the time. They knew a lot more about Patrick Bailey because he'd been at NC State where they scouted Will Wilson, where they scouted Nick Swiney, the pitcher. And so they felt a little bit more comfortable. You can never have too much catching depth. And at the same time, teams really covet two-way catchers. So guys who are hitters and guys who are also really strong behind the plate. And I don't know if Bailey's ever going to be like a star at the major league level, but there's a pretty good chance that this guy pans out and becomes someone who can play at least part-time, if not every day behind the plate. And if you get him up to AA, AAA, and you see that Joey Bart is doing extremely well and you don't need to pair him with anyone, go ahead and trade a catcher who another team is
get him away.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, if you think that he can be really helpful, maybe you hoard this guy and you create a situation where you've got Joey Bart playing 81 games, Patrick Bailey playing 81 games behind the plate, and they're both DHing because Bart definitely has the bat to be an impact DH, and Bailey certainly has power. It's just a question of whether he'll ever hit for average at the major league level. So I didn't see why they did it at the time, but ultimately 10 minutes later, it made a little bit more sense to me.
You can't use the DH word about Carmen. Those are bad words.
Yeah, if you keep talking about the DH, I'm leaving this call right now.
Oh, I'm with you. I hate the DH.
We were telling Alex he can never use text your friends again. It's like RIP, text your friends.
Yeah.
End of an era.
It's 2020. It's time. We all use the bathroom indoors. We all have running water. It's time.
Anthony, I never thought you'd be that person. Get out. Get out of my house. You're grounded.
Well, one of the other things I noticed, Kerry, was that it seemed like they were drafting a lot of versatile players. That seems to be more of like the theme with Farhan, because didn't they draft one of the San Diego State players who's a third baseman and also a closer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Casey Schmidt, who was an elite closer in 2018 at the college level, struggled a little bit last year. And when I say struggled, I mean he wasn't just like the best pitcher in all of college baseball, pretty much like he was in 2018 coming out of the bullpen. But they talk about him as a guy who will definitely play third base. He has the power to hit to all fields, and so they really think that he could be a third baseman of the future type. Obviously, something the Giants need. A few years ago, they went after Jacob Gonzalez in the draft, 2018, I think it was. He hasn't quite panned out into that elite level prospect they thought he would be. So taking Casey Schmidt is some insurance there. He's a college guy, more of a proven track record. And if you need someone to come in and throw an inning at a time, I'm relatively positive they'll develop him like that in the minor leagues. They're going to focus on hitting, but this is someone who can throw bullpens on the side. This is someone who, if you're going to go in a situation where you're losing by 7 runs and it's the 7th inning and you don't want to burn another pitcher, maybe you just bring in your third baseman. The Giants have seen it work with Pablo Sandoval, who still holds the record for lowest ERA in franchise history. Why not bring in Casey Schmidt?
So what you're telling me is that they drafted this guy because they're like, hey, Pablo did it. Why can't this guy? Why don't we just get him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was the exact thought process, but you can certainly make a connection.
Crazy idea. What if we use our third baseman as the opener?
Oh, yeah. It's a great idea. Also, because then you can hit someone like, say you want to give Joey Bart a day off, but you're facing a left-handed pitcher and you want to get him one at bat against that left-handed starter because he has numbers on him. Put him in at third base or whatever in the top of the inning, bat him second or third, and then put Casey Schmidt down in the 9 spot in the order, and then have Schmidt move over to third base. There are so many different ways you can get creative with this.
I just went Galaxy brain.
Exactly.
That's some Tampa Bay bullshit right there that you just
I mean, I love it. So it's like when Sergio Romo played the outfield or first base or whatever he did in Tampa Bay. The Giants are going to be doing that by the middle of the 2020s.
I mean, if we have to have a DH, I mean, let the bullshit commence. I'm in.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Speaking of the season, since we're actually talking baseball here a little bit, because we've all been struggling to just have baseball in our lives, and it just seems like it's never ending with this high school fight that is going on between the Players Association and the owners. But Robert Manfred came out just on Wednesday saying that he's 100% sure there's going to be a season in 2020. Kerry, why is he so positive that this season is going to happen when this back and forth is going nowhere?
Well, first off, you said the high school fight with a real personal connection to that. So
I do. I've had my own Mean Girls experience.
There's definitely a backstory there.
Now it's over.
And I'm sure you can touch on that in later on in the episode or in another episode. But with regard to Rob Manfred, I do believe that even if Major League Baseball owners and the Major League Baseball Players Association don't reach an agreement in this seemingly endless back and forth that is leading nowhere and neither side is making any significant concessions, that Manfred can order the players back to the field for a 48-game season with prorated pay, because they have this agreement that they made in March when the coronavirus shutdown initially delayed the league. I think opening day was initially pushed back 2 weeks. And at the time it was like, oh yeah, maybe they will start the season in San Diego on April 9th. And within 24 hours, we knew that wasn't going to be the case. But anyway, they came to an agreement that if players return, they would get prorated pay. And so the owners have decided that at the very least, they'll do like a 48 game season. So let's say no agreement is reached within the next 7 days or so. I do think that they will mandate a start date sometime end of July and just say, okay, we've got a 48 game season. Too bad the Nationals went 19-31 in their first 50 games last year, and that it's not representative of baseball at all to do something like this. Let's have a free for all and let's put baseball on the field. And I don't know, maybe star players will opt out and just be like, this isn't worth it, but enough players will be out there and there will be some baseball in some form. So I think technically speaking, he's probably right with the 100%.
So what you're telling me is like, it's probably going to happen. And if it does, it's not going to be until mid-July. So guys, all of our predictions are out the door. Everyone is lost. Even you, Anthony, with your July 4th prediction.
Price is Right style, I got closest.
Oh,
you got closest?
Yeah.
I said July 4.
For the record, in that episode, I said either July 1st or the All-Star break. So I hedged them.
You can't
Wow.
do that.
You can't
Cole.
give two,
Y'all are
Cole.
You guys should have spoken up during the episode. It's too
Well,
late
we
now.
spent a lot of time in
Right.
Vegas.
You can't pick two prices.
This
Carmen,
is
you
the
were
high school
right?
girl fighting I'm talking
Carmen
about.
did
Carrie.
terribly.
Yeah.
Carmen thought it was going to start like right now, and it clearly isn't anywhere near that. I mean,
Carmen, you said June 1st.
oh my God, I was definitely like drinking something that day. But I'm thinking like, even if they reach an agreement tomorrow, you need a week to get people to where they need to be, and then you need 2 weeks of spring training. So at least we're 3 weeks out.
Yeah.
So it sounds like spring training, if it occurs, will occur in kind of the home club fields. Is that right?
Yeah, the Giants definitely want to do spring training in San Francisco. So it'll be a bunch of inter-squad scrimmages and preparing for the season with like bullpens at Oracle Park. So they will definitely make use of those new bullpens out in the outfield. But yeah, it'll be really fascinating to see the ramp up for the season, because maybe they'll go bus over to Oakland and play the A's. Maybe the A's will bus over to San Francisco, play the Giants. Probably a better idea, but who knows what happens.
I mean, I heard that word on the street is Arizona's about 110 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
So I can't imagine just everybody just fainting out in the heat trying to have spring training. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the coronavirus is one thing, and especially in Arizona, but at the same time, like, imagine having Buster Posey, Brandon Crawford, Brandon Belt, and Hunter Pence out for their little 4-person group workout at 1 o'clock on a nice sunny July day in Scottsdale.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't work. And speaking of coronavirus and kind of that edge of things, it sounds like you've been doing some work at the news desk outside of baseball, covering things like COVID-19. And more recently, you've been kind of tapping into the protests that have been occurring for Black Lives Matters. How has that just generally been? I mean, you've kind of been out there for a lot of the protests now. What's the general sense you're getting out there?
Well, I will tell you that I absolutely love covering baseball, and it is like the coolest job in the world. But in terms of doing really fulfilling work that you feel good about at the end of the day, you feel like you're informing the public, you're telling the important stories that actually matter to the community. Covering the coronavirus and covering the latest protests in the wake of George Floyd's death and the Black Lives Matter protests has been extremely fulfilling. And it's also given me a really great appreciation for the people who do this on a daily basis. Like, I'm pitching in. Normally, I get to travel around the country and go to different baseball stadiums and write about, you know, the 9th inning meltdown. And like, what a luxury that is, because I'm also working alongside a really dedicated staff that absolutely loves the communities that they live in, and they just want the absolute best for them. And so they cover them, you know, every hour of the day. If something comes up in Fremont, our Fremont reporter is out there. If something comes up, you know, in South San Jose, our San Jose reporter is on the scene, regardless of what time of day it is. So I just have an incredible appreciation for the journalists who do this on a daily basis, because I knew what kind of dedication and devotion it took, but until you're actually like on the job pitching in and helping them out in the smallest of ways, you don't really have a sense for everything that they do.
Yeah, and I think where this gets interesting is how this merges with your actual day job, which is covering baseball. I think in general we understand that potentially this is a sensitive topic for some. And I just wanted to get a sense of what you feel like is the consensus on this movement within baseball, generally speaking. But more specifically, what about the Giants?
So I'll speak to baseball more broadly, and unfortunately, I don't know that there is a consensus. I think that the 5 people on this call right now could, look each other in the eye and say, Black Lives Matter, say that we all need to do more in our own personal lives, in our own industries that we work in, to kind of erase racial injustices and figure out where racial injustices exist, what we've done wrong in the past, what we could do better in the future, and how we can be better allies. But I also don't know that baseball as a sport is in a place where it's always been kind of receptive to new ideas and to pushing forward and to, eliminating the old ways of the past. It's a sport that's been very stuck in its ways. And I think that that's often hurt Black players. It's often hurt Latino players who maybe don't feel like they can openly express themselves in the clubhouse. And so I hope that baseball players are using this moment to take a really long, hard look at society and a really long, hard look at their own organizations, the own clubhouses that they inhabit on a daily basis, and figure out how they can make them a more welcoming place. Because you look at the participation of Black players in Major League Baseball, and it has gone down in recent years. And you look at different initiatives that Major League Baseball has attempted to start, the RBI program. Have they really done enough to promote baseball in the inner city? I'm not so sure. Have they really done enough to make Black and Latino players welcome in the game? I can pretty confidently say no to that. And so I hope that they're using this as an opportunity to think about, when baseball returns, what can they improve upon? What can they do better? And more specifically to the Giants, I do think that they're in a good place with the leadership team that they've assembled. And Farhan Zaidi, who's the only Muslim president of baseball operations, who can speak, at maybe some of the injustices that he's faced in his career, maybe some of the preconceived notions that he's had to overcome. I know when he was first hired, fans wanted to just paint him as a computer geek. And I worked hard in my writing to show that's not fair. That's not who Farhan is. He's someone who is extremely well-rounded, extremely knowledgeable, and knows the sport inside and out. And people just wanted to say, look, this is someone who has a degree from MIT, who's just punching numbers. But, it's so easy to, paint in broad strokes and make generalizations. But, I think that people now realize that you can't do that. And so Farhan's a great leader to have for the Giants because of the experiences that he's had. And I also think that Gabe Kapler is someone who can lead them through this moment. I know that you guys saw what Gabe Kapler posted on his Instagram about the action steps that he can take to become a better ally, about supporting Black-owned businesses in the community, about making sure that he's having difficult conversations with coaches on his staff and with players on his team. And I know that he has the trust of the players in the clubhouse. And I know that Gabe is not afraid to use his voice in a moment like this. And so, you see the other examples that have been set by Bay Area coaches and Steve Kerr and Kyle Shanahan. And I do believe that Gabe Kapler is up to this moment and willing to kind of move the Giants forward and have them be that model team or model franchise that can set the expectation in baseball, which is a sport that, like we said, just has historically not necessarily done the best job of looking itself in the eye and looking at problems that have persisted in the clubhouse and throughout organizations.
Yeah, I'm thinking a little bit about the reaction and the statement that was put out by MLB in general. There was no mention of police brutality. There was no mention of Black Lives Matters. I just want to get a sense of, if you feel like there is genuine action behind these, and these actions are not performative in any way. What do you feel like is going to actually change within baseball because of this movement?
That's a really good question. I think you'd have to go on an individual basis. And this is something that I'm really looking forward to exploring when baseball does return and when regular media access does return, in having, casual conversations around the clubhouse to see how players felt about these things, to see how coaches viewed the protests that were taking place in their communities, and to see how they reacted to them, if they, looked at their own actions in the past. But with regard to the Black Lives Matter signs that appeared on the draft, I actually saw someone post about this on social media, and they said, it felt a little bit hollow because when Major League Baseball does dive into a cause that it cares about, take Stand Up for Cancer as an example. You've got that extremely powerful moment at the All-Star game every year and in postseasons where you've got everyone holding up their Stand Up for Cancer sign, and it's got a personal message that's been written in. It's got someone who has been a cancer victim that they're honoring in that moment. And all these Black Lives Matter signs said were Black Lives Matter. But what if they included an opportunity for them to say an action step or to honor someone or to memorialize someone? What if someone talked in detail about the way that George Floyd's death struck them or the way that Breonna Taylor's death struck them and that the police officers still have not been convicted and not been brought in for that? I think that there were so many more ways that baseball could have taken a powerful step forward. So that's why I honestly say that I don't know if the industry is ready for this moment and is ready to move forward. And, baseball has, as you've seen in many other facets of American life right now, moved slower. The NBA has a plan to come back from the coronavirus. The NHL has a plan to come back from the coronavirus. The NFL has plans in place to resume practice. Baseball doesn't have anything. And, it's obviously much larger rosters than basketball and hockey, but at the same time, it's also a situation where I think that so many people in leadership positions in baseball are white, and so many people in media positions, including myself, are white. And if we have more diversity, if we have more diverse thought in terms of voices, I think that baseball will eventually be able to take that step, because there are people in the game who may want to change. They just don't know how yet. And I hope that baseball figures out a way to move forward.
Yeah, and you touched on something, basically my last question to wrap this up is, we're all in sports media, obviously, but I think you're a little bit closer to the team. You cover them on a daily basis alongside with a lot of your colleagues. I think one of the themes that I've seen is the stick to sports. Should you be kind of delving into Black Lives Matter? Does it affect the game? And to that, I'd just love to hear your take on how you feel about that stance.
Yeah, I haven't always practiced what I preach from that stance, because I will say, when you first enter the press box at 22 years old, you are just trying to make sure that you don't get fired that day. You're just trying to make sure that you can blend in and do the job well. So I will readily admit that I have not used my voice in ways that I could, and I have long admired the way that Henry Schulman and Andrew Bagley are not afraid to speak out on Twitter when they see something that they don't agree with. And that's not to say that Twitter is the only way to use your voice, but we are all human beings far before we are journalists. I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a friend. I consider those roles in my life much, much, much more significant than the job title that I'm very fortunate and privileged to have, which is as a sports writer. So if I say something, on social media, if I say something in my writing even, it's going to come from the place of me being a human being first. And what I'll also say is, a lot of times you hear from people who say, don't get political. You can talk about what you want, but don't get political. And equality isn't political. It's unfortunate that we have to go to the voting box to make real change happen when we want to erase injustice, when we want things to be more equal in society. That's an unfortunate reality. But a stance where you're moving for equality, whether it be for women's rights, whether it be for LGBT rights, whether it be for Black rights, whether it be for any marginalized group of people's rights, you can't say stick to sports to someone, because we're human beings first. And if you're pushing for equality, if you're pushing to move things forward, I just don't see any way where, sticking to sports is even acceptable at this point.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think racism is a partisan issue. So I'm agreeing with you there, and you're pretty knowledgeable enough to write a course on sports writing. Cole, do you want to take it away for this segment?
Well, I actually wanted to ask real quick if there's any players or just people of the baseball world that you have seen that are specifically not sticking to sports right now that you want to shout out. Because, for example, Joey Votto Jack Flaherty, they've all been super vocal about this, and it's been really refreshing to see voices like that in the MLB community.
Yeah, I would build off that, and Jack Flaherty right away comes to mind because he is not someone who has even reached arbitration yet. He is not someone who has signed a free agent contract. And in baseball, I think there's this view in the Players Association, and maybe they're growing out of this a little bit, but if you haven't kind of earned your keep in the game, you keep your voice down. And so to see Jack Flaherty use his voice, to see Tim Anderson, the White Sox shortstop, use his voice in this moment has been really, really refreshing to me. But the one thing that I will say, just because it came up within the last 24 hours or so, was Torrey Hunter speaking out about the racism that he faced in Boston, which, as many black players in the game will tell you, is very real and has been happening for many, many years. And the Red Sox acknowledging that. The Red Sox took to social media to defend Torrey Hunter and say that they received a specific number of, a specific number of citations regarding examples of where players face racism in the outfield. And that, to me, it's really unfortunate. It's really unacceptable. And what's most upsetting is that it took the Red Sox until now to come out and say something about it, because, if you knew this was happening, if you knew that this was taking place, go do something about it. Take a stance in the moment. We didn't just determine that racism was bad. We didn't just find out that this was happening at Fenway Park. We've known these things. And so go do something in the moment. I applaud the Red Sox for coming out and saying something now, because you cannot simply swipe things under the rug. But at the same time, it's on everyone to look themselves in the eye and realize moments in the past where you've said something, done something that hasn't lined up with who you are now. And there are opportunities to fix things, but I also think that if you find something in the moment, do something about it.
Yeah, and I remember Adam Jones faced some comments and incidents in the at AT&T Park in the outfield just not too long ago, honestly. So I just want to make the statement also that racism is not something that occurs in only conservative towns. It happens everywhere, and it happens on different levels, from blatant to kind of microaggressions. So I think that is something that I'm glad we're talking about and addressing, because I think you can't talk about baseball without talking about the issue of race.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more with that.
All right, now let's shift gears a little and give anyone who wants to explore the world of sports writing, sports journalism, a chance to learn from the master. Kerry, how can people go about, or should I say homeroom, how can people go about that?
Well, funny you ask, Cole. So I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about this, because I was on a 4-week furlough period from the Bay Area News Group, and I used the opportunity to build this online course called Your Future in Sports Writing. And what I've told everyone was, if you, like Cole, mistakenly think of me as the master, or if you think that I have the answers to unlocking things in the industry, you'd be out of luck, because I don't. I am one person, and I've been very lucky to work my way into the jobs that I have. But what this course does is it gives the voices, feedback, and advice of 28 people within the industry. So most of the reporters who contributed to the course are probably within their first 5 to 10 years of sports writing, really, really close to out of college. They're sports writers of the digital age. They understand the business models that are in existence right now within sports writing. And their experiences are very relatable for kids who are just coming out of school, or students who are looking to secure their next internship. So I used that time to build an 18-chapter course complete with 28 experts, I would say, in different topics. And it's got text, it's got audio, it's got video. And I was extraordinarily nervous to put it out, because, even though I'm someone who writes 1 million articles a day and is on the internet all the time, I would describe myself as very online. This is something different. And so, yeah, it's been really pleasantly surprising to connect with so many young sports writers through this.
Awesome. And people can find that via your Twitter bio. Where
I'm definitely need some work on the marketing. So they can currently find it on my Twitter bio. You can also find it on teachable.com, although it's very difficult to figure out how to navigate that. But if you type in yourfutureinsportswriting.teachable, very easy web address. yourfutureinsportswriting.teachable.com, you will stumble upon the course. So really the best way to go about it is probably to DM me on Twitter. My DMs have become a customer service portal, I would say. And that's probably how like 1% of Twitter users think of their DMs. But so a lot of students have been, figuring out more about the course there.
Can I ask you how much the course costs?
Yes. So the course does cost $99. However, as any student who has DM'd me will tell you, if someone has lost work due to the coronavirus, if someone has lost an internship due to the coronavirus, you can DM me. We'll cut a deal. I will work with you. Cost is not going to be prohibitive on something like this. It would just not be representative of what I believe in for people wanting to get into the industry to charge them a full price if they can't pay a full price. So if someone, would love to take the course but can only do it for $10, we're going to work with you. We're going to figure out a way to make sure that this course is available to you and open to you because, like I said, cost is not going to be prohibitive. I'm not going to run credit checks. I'm not going to look into like people's financial aid history. I will take your word for it. Come to me and let's make this happen.
And Kerry, just from personal standpoint, I want to donate a course to somebody.
Wow.
So,
that is amazing.
If there are any aspiring sports writers, I'd like to sponsor your journey. So you pick somebody, Kerry, and I will sponsor their course.
That is incredible. I do think we may have a little bit of a wait list right now in terms of donations. So that
somebody
is awesome.
Good. I don't want some goofy, terrible person.
Yeah, exactly. I'll match you up with a Dodgers fan.
Oh God. Okay. Yeah. As long as he works hard.
Exactly. There
he or she.
Look at that.
Or they.
There you go.
Look at that.
Yeah, I got
Thank you so much, Carmen. That makes my.
Yeah, of course. I love you. You're the best.
Oh.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Kerry. This has been a great episode from all of us here at Shelter on Base. I almost said the other show's name. Have a
Don't talk about them.
Rest of your week, and we'll see you guys again next week.
Thank you so much. Before you sign off, I do have a quick question.
Yeah.
Was the previous guest on this show Sean Jelly?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think you have gone from having the tallest guest you could possibly have to potentially having the shortest guest in the show's history.
Renell is not that tall, though, right? Are you taller than Renell? You got?
It's close.
I was going to say it's pretty close.
Yeah, but Renell and I are not far off. We would probably play the same position on like a basketball team.
The question is, do you wear heels?
Yeah, I think if Renell's wearing her heels, I think she might have you beat.
Exactly. Yeah. So Renell, who I love, I hope she was wearing heels for the show because I am not. I'm flat-footed, so that would probably sneak me a little bit under her.
Fantastic. We'll have to set up the height rankings on Twitter.
Yeah, which the most important aspect of show guests is for sure height.
That's right.
Sure.
All right. Bye, guys.